Ayhan Cetin will present Have Hizmet Participants' Perceptions of Basic Human Rights Transformed as a Result of Their Persecution since July 2016?
Good morning, everyone. As I said, so it took almost more than a day to get here. So I'm still recovering, but I'll try my best. So my name is Ayhan Cetin. I am an executive director of Turquoise Harmony Institute, based on. Okay, so the background of the study actually. So I as an insider, so I've been away from Turkey more than 20 years. So it was very difficult to understand for me to understand the political and the social dynamics of Turkey. So after 2013, human rights issue became one of the main discussion point, in Hizmet Movement. And after 2016, as you know, and people started to come out from Turkey, and some of them, they came to South Africa also. And human rights, again, is a very hot topic, and it was the main issue of discussion amongst these people who came from Turkey. And the discussions around mainly about self-reflection about human rights, their actions, their activities, their practices about human rights in Turkey, and self-criticism, and also they were really talking about their regrets about their human rights issues in Turkey. So for me, I thought it should be important for me to understand the transformation. So how were they thinking about human rights, and what were they doing about human rights in Turkey, and there in South Africa? Is there something happening in a positive way? So that is the purpose or background of the study. It is more individual and self-learning than an academic purpose for me. Next. So I just want to get into the research methodology. So we identified 8 individuals. They came from South Africa after 2016, and they were from different professionals in Turkey. Some of them, they had to leave through illegal ways, through the mountains and the rivers, and the others, they came in normal means. And they changed their occupations. If you can change the slide, please. Yeah, so many of them, they went to business in South Africa. And ethnically, one of them was Kurdish, one Arab, and the other one was Turkish. Yeah, so, okay, next please. And I also want to give a settings of the research in South Africa, because it's a new home for them, and it is important to understand what kind of environment we have in South Africa. So it's predominantly black people, 80%, predominantly Christians. We have around 2% Muslims, but the visibility of Muslim community in South Africa is very high. For example, you can find a mosque almost every suburb in South Africa. Halal food is not a big issue. So, for example, all the McDonald's are halal and the KFCs are halal. So the Turkish people were very happy about that. So there's a kind of comfort zone for a Muslim Turkish person in South Africa. And there is 11 official languages. And the South Africa is, by the World Bank, the most unequal country in the world. So that is also very interesting, because it can be seen as a reason for human rights abuses and the violations, or it can be the consequences of all these human rights violations. And this is also a great concern for South Africa. So these are the main human rights violations reported by Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. But most visible one and the more affected most of them or many people are affected by the xenophobia. I'm sure you heard about it in the news, gender-based violence, and the level of corruption. So these are very visible in the country. And the Hizmet movement in South Africa, I think it's one of the safest places for Hizmet movement to operate. And they are operating in 6 cities. There are 9 schools, 2 tuition centers, 1 dialogue institute with 3 branches, 1 charity organization, and we have a Nizamiya complex in South Africa. I'm sure you heard about that, the biggest mosque, they say, in the southern hemisphere. And the population of Hizmet community, with everyone, business people, teachers, or whoever affiliated with the movement who came from Turkey, and we can talk about 500 people, and the 30 families. There are 30 families recently moved to South Africa because of the persecution. Okay, so we had one-to-one in-depth interview with these 8 individuals. So our findings I'm going to share, because it is a little bit in depth, so I just want to focus on a few of them. And the themes were, so we look at what shaped their human rights understanding and perception and practices, and what their practices in Turkey, their practices in South Africa, and what were they regretting about, human rights issues in Turkey. So the most important factor that shaped their human rights understanding is the state's systematic indoctrination on national identity and the human rights perceptions towards minority and marginalized groups. So almost every participant, so they indicated it has a big impact on their human rights perception, particularly against those minorities, so including Kurds, Alawites, and the non-Muslim minority. So because of this indoctrination, it has led to lack of understanding and awareness about these minority groups and their human rights among the general public, so including all our participants. And they also noted that the state has been successful in molding the perception of the population in a way that whoever protests or whoever defends the rights of these minority groups labeled as criminals. And it is the biggest factor for them to not do something actively, for the protection of rights of these people. Okay. So, for example, one of the Kurdish participants, he said about this, so I couldn't do anything to protect the rights of Kurdish people because those who did were already facing the harsh face of the state. So there was nothing you could do. Of course, there was a distinction between being PKK and not revealing your Kurdish identity. If I defended Kurdish rights too much, I was put in the same category as PKK members. To be honest, I couldn't do much because of that and because of the social pressure at school, at work, and among my friends. And the second factor was their religion, of course, and they said the Islam has provided the foundation of their understanding of human rights, the principle of equality and non-discrimination. These are the essence of Islam, they said. And of course, teachings of Fethullah Gülen, and all of them, so they indicated clearly, so there is a very positive impact of teachings of Fethullah Gülen in shaping their human rights. Particularly, Fethullah Gülen's understanding of interreligious, intercultural dialogue, and they had a good understanding of, respecting other people from different backgrounds, different religions, and different cultures. And I think this was also very significant. Their personal experience of the participants, they are indicated that their involvement in the Hizmet movement increased their awareness of human rights, because they've been exposed to human rights violations and the negative treatment due to their participation in the movement. And this direct experience has led to a deeper understanding of the importance of human rights and the need to take action to protect them. And we also talk about their practices in Turkey about human rights. I think it was quite interesting for me, and they were not agree on many issues. I think two emergent discussion came out this research, and the one group they were talking about, Hizmet Movement was supposed to take more active stand about human rights violations in Turkey in an activism way. So, doing advocacy or lobbying with the government officials, and they could have done more about, defending and protecting the human rights. And they also say, Hizmet affiliated institutions, media, and the other individuals, they could have done more about, the human rights violations in Turkey. And the biggest critics about this was about the Hizmet Movement affiliated media, and they argued that the media affiliated with the movement had a biased and a quiet stance when it comes to reporting on human rights violations, and the lack of impartial reporting on these matters led to a negative perception of the movement's stance on human rights. So it was one of the biggest discussions and one of the biggest critics. And on the other hand, other group, they said, according to them, Hizmet Movement should not be considered as a human rights movement, as it has not explicitly positioned itself as such. As a result, it would not be fair to hold the institutions affiliated with the movement to the standards and the expectations of a traditional human rights defender organization. This viewpoint suggests that while the movement may undertake initiatives aimed at promoting equality and the social justice, it may not necessarily prioritize human rights activism or engage in typical tactics, strategies used by human rights organizations, such as protesting or lobbying government officials. So instead, movement focus on education, more proactive ways of promoting and protecting human rights, promoting education, interfaith and intercultural dialogue, meaningful civic engagement, and capacity building. I'm just keeping this. And when it comes to South Africa and their practices of human rights, I think the most important thing for them to understand what's going on in South Africa in terms of human rights is very much related to their level of integration to South African society. So the ones who are more active in the society, most of them are business people, so they have a very good understanding of human rights issues in South Africa. But the others who are more with the Turkish community, they have very narrow perspective on the human rights issues in South Africa. And they mainly compare what happened in Turkey and in terms of those experience, what's happening in South Africa. And the dynamics of Turkey and South Africa are really different from each other. So therefore, they think that South Africa is a good country, so everybody respects each other, because South Africa, we don't have much problem in terms of freedom of religion, in terms of freedom of expression. But many of them, they are hesitant to do more in South Africa to protect or defend the human rights issues, because they think foreigners, being a foreign in that country, and the xenophobia is one of the biggest issues in South Africa, and they think they are very hesitant to take active measures to protect and defend human rights issues in South Africa. As a conclusion, The findings of this research, which has a very limited scope, as you see, so with 8 people in South African context, but it indicates a trend of increased human rights consciousness among members of the Hizmet movement, which appears to be shaped by mainly their negative experiences of persecution in Turkey. And it also shows a strong determination to play an active role to bring about positive change. Nevertheless, it seems very clear that their personal experience in Turkey continue to impact negatively their immediate actions regarding human rights violations. I think I'll stop here.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Thank you.